one.
Hi there. I am Morgan Vaughan. I'm at LTV, and I'm sitting in for Michael Clark today as the co-host of Ask the Supervisor. Today is Wednesday, June 2nd. It is 2 p.m. And as every week at this time, Peter Van Scoyoc, East Hampton's town supervisor, is here to answer your questions. So please call 609-663-0574 with questions, and Jason will answer the phone or something. I don't really actually know how this works. Or you can email me at morgan@ltveh.org. I have my computer right up so I can see everything. You can watch via our YouTube channel or on channel 22, as you might be doing right now. So Peter, thank you once again for visiting us on Wednesdays. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me back, and thanks for sitting in for Michael. It's great to see you again. It's been a little while.
Well, I think the last time I saw you was at the vaccine clinic.
That's probably true.
That's probably true.
That's the last time I saw many people.
I know.
It was at a vaccine clinic. In fact, I've been telling everybody that that's really the social event of the season is to go to a vaccine clinic.
I agree with you.
All the people you like and haven't seen for a long time. And it's a really great vibe, and lifting the weight of the pandemic off of our shoulders is certainly a great thing. So
I agree with you completely. I think it was the social event of the season. It was so fun to see everybody and just like bump elbows or whatever. I loved it. Okay, so do you have anything in particular that you want to bring up before we hopefully get some calls or I ask you some questions?
Well, summer is upon us. We've just come through Memorial Day weekend, although it was a little difficult to tell that it's the kickoff of really the summer season because it was 48 degrees and I had to hook up the wood stove and fire that up again, which is really odd and bizarre. And somebody said, so when was the last time we didn't have a rainy Memorial Day weekend? And I started thinking about it. We've actually had quite a few rainy Memorial Day weekends over the years.
Wasn't it beautiful last year? Am I crazy in thinking that?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was very foggy and wet and damp. And we might have had one nice sunny day out of the entire weekend. It was probably Monday afternoon when everybody was trying to drive home. But
I think that was the cruelest moment of this past weekend was exactly that, was that I looked outside at about 4:00 on Monday afternoon and it was beautiful.
Yeah. So, that meant that the beaches were not crowded. We did have a gale that came through, which caused beach erosion on the newly replenished beaches in Montauk. And so that was very disappointing. Normally we're through the storm season by mid-May. Again, kind of an odd change in our climate. Strange pattern. We have a really nice dry section in May, which we usually don't get a spring. We usually go right from this rainy, drizzly kind of weather that we had on Memorial Day. And, Memorial Day on, it's instant summer, it goes from 50 to 80.
That was unusual though this past weekend. That was cold rain. I mean, it was a nor'easter, wasn't it? I mean, officially it was.
Well, I don't know if it was officially a nor'easter, but it was definitely a gale and the wind blowing from the east.
It was really
but
cold.
Yeah, it was not welcome. I don't think anybody really enjoyed the washout. The big news though was parades are back.
Oh yeah, I know.
We had Memorial Day parade this year in the village and remembrance ceremony on the Memorial Green, which is always a moving experience, I think. We had our local fire departments show up, an auxiliary, and the Girl Scouts marched, and of course the Color Guard and the VFW, our veterans, marched as well. And it was a great time to take a moment and in somber remembrance of all those who, paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and to ensure that we could, continue our democracy. And I think we all owe an incredible debt of gratitude to those who served, and of course those who perished on our behalf, and a responsibility to ensure that our democracy continues and that we are able to have a free country that really takes into consideration the needs and rights of all citizens. So that was great to be back. with people and have a public ceremony like that.
It must be I mean, now we're getting to the point where we're at the end of our World War II survivors, I think. I didn't get to go to that, but I put it on the crawl and everything. And it's just so nice to hear that we're still doing that. And we did it this year, especially.
We are, and you're right. The World War II veterans are leaving us in large numbers now. They're reaching much into their high 90s, I think, most of them 90s and beyond. I have my grandfather fought in World War II. He's an artillery officer, and my great uncle was also in the war. He perished at 21 at Anzio and never saw his infant son. So, and I know that there are families all over this country and all over the world that had impacts like that as a result. And I think right now we're just really kind of moving through a period of time that will be remembered in history. The pandemic of 2020 has had profound global impacts, and certainly worldwide, right down to the local level. And we'll be feeling the repercussions of that for many years to come.
What do you think is the biggest change that we've seen so far from this pandemic last year?
Well, I think the biggest immediate change is that East Hampton suddenly became a year-round community that was much larger in population. It really mirrored almost what our summer population is. Pretty much every second home was occupied throughout the pandemic. Refugees from all over, but primarily from New York City. And
what numbers do we have for that? What is the actual? Do we have numbers?
So I think we have something close to a population of second home and year-round. There's something close to about 78,000 people, and I think we were pretty close to that, honestly, for much of the pandemic. One of the measurements of population that we took notice of was the amount of garbage that we were receiving at the transfer station was 3 times what it normally would be off season.
Wow.
And much more commensurate with what we'd expect to see, in the summertime. So that's one of the indicators. Driving around neighborhoods, seeing lights on in every home in the wintertime, another indication. There's some neighborhoods and streets that are basically vacant. One of the other side effects of that was that the number of larceny burglaries was down somewhat significantly.
Really? Because people weren't in their house?
Because people were home.
Oh my gosh.
People were using the houses.
Burglars are smart.
So although, as we know, earlier in the pandemic, there was a rash of auto thefts of Range Rovers in particular, because as it turns out, if the mirrors are out, then the key fob is in the car. And so car thieves would just roam neighborhoods looking for Range Rovers with the mirrors out and then hop in and drive them away.
See, you learn a lot of stuff on this show.
You really do. You really do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, right?
Schools. So the schools saw the schools weirdly didn't see an influx.
Yes, so some of the schools saw, 100% increase in enrollment.
Right.
We saw some new schools, the Avenue School,
Avenue School, right.
I think they're planning on staying. It's going to be interesting to see, how our dynamics and demographics shift. This is a short-term trend, or if it's going to be a longer-term trend. And I think there are a number of people who will decide that, I really prefer to live here and I can work here remotely, as we all discovered and adapted and learned how to do that. And maybe they find that it's not necessary for them to be in person wherever they live, Manhattan or wherever they conduct business. And, maybe they'll commute to their city apartments for cultural things and go into the city for the weekend to dine or taking a show or doctor's office or whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, that will very much change the way I think we live moving forward. If we do have a much larger year-round population, that'll increase the number of services and demands on local governments and on taxes.
What about the hospital? Because now the hospital must have seen an increase in demand. It must have over this time. Well,
they did. And, I think the hospital is under a number of different dynamics. One is because of COVID, any elective surgeries were sidelined for much of the time. So they had significant economic impacts because elective surgeries weren't being done. So that had, I think, a negative impact on their ability to operate and fund. On the other hand, they were dealing with COVID patients. And so, that type of care, they saw huge increases in. But, people with other sort of injuries, they did also see. But I think because there was less driving, there were fewer automobile accidents as a result. So it was.
Isn't it amazing how everything is interconnected? It's so amazing.
So interconnected, and it's remarkable. The smallest of actions in our world can have really profound beneficial or catastrophic impacts, depending.
It's really incredible. What's happening with, catch me up on the emergency. I know there's going to be an emergency acute care facility. What is happening with that? Is that happening?
So there's a satellite emergency center planned for Pantago Place, right next to Town Hall, on the site of the current Little League ball fields, which will be relocated to Stephen Hand's Path.
Okay.
The hospital has leased that property from the town and agreed to pay $1.75 million for the ball field relocation. They are in the process of continuing their fundraising efforts, and I think they're nearly there. In addition, they've done some refinement, I think, to their overall plan for the building itself. So that's wending its way through review process and planning. So.
And will the entrance be off 27, or will the entrance be off Abraham's Path? Or what path is there?
Springs Close back up on the other side, but the Water Authority property is between Springs Close and the hospital. The main entrance will be off Pantago Place, as it is now. And we may seek to have some interconnectivity of traffic flow between the town hall campus and that area. That's still under review and discussion.
Is there a timeline for that? Is that within the next 3 years?
I think actually that the fall groundbreaking is possible. I think that's been talked about. So I think they're getting very close.
So another question that is near and dear to my heart and to my friends' hearts, and we were talking a little bit before, is about housing and cost of living here and what sort of regular people can do. And correct me if I'm wrong, was there a program that the town had a while back where the town would buy smaller cottages, et cetera, for use for affordable housing eventually? Am I crazy?
I can't determine whether or not you're crazy or not.
No, the answer is yes. But in answer to my question, there seems to me that that's
all kidding aside, all kidding aside, housing was a crisis before the pandemic.
Right.
It has become even more exacerbated by the influx of folks with more wealth than our local economy provides, buying up real estate. And I think it would be safe to say that we've seen real estate values go up maybe as much as 30 or 35% across the board.
Right.
We've seen huge increases in revenue for our community preservation fund. And I think one of the most promising aspects of being able to deal with the housing crisis will be if the state Senate passes a bill before them now, which is being offered in the Senate by Anthony Colombo. In the Assembly, it recently passed. It was offered by Fred Thiel. who was the drafter of that legislation, passed before the pandemic. Governor decided not to sign it, but it would create a transfer tax on real estate transactions that would contribute 0.5% of that transaction to a specific fund for affordable housing.
Oh.
And very much like the Community Preservation Fund operates, but a separate fund, which would generate revenue so that we could fund housing projects within the township. That's hopefully going to pass the Senate very soon. They're just about done with their work for this session. And we're going to lobby the governor to sign it, as I did last time around. I suspect because of the pandemic and the dire need that the governor will take a more favorable view of this legislation this time around.
I think it sounds like personally, it sounds like a great idea. And I thought that actually the CPF was already doing that a little bit. I thought
no, it's not allowed to be used for affordable housing. It's just open space, farmland preservation, historic preservation, and recently the adjustment to CPF law was that you could use up to 20% for water quality projects.
Okay.
So we've been doing septic upgrade grants, people switching over to innovative alternative methods of waste disposal that take much of the nitrogen out of that wastewater, which protects both our groundwater and our surface waters. This is an initiative, and I urge anyone in town, if you haven't already done so, apply for the grant. The process will pay for nearly every single expense between state, county, and town grants. You could be eligible up to $40,000 in total. We recently expanded the water protection districts from a 2-year groundwater travel time to surface waters to 10-year to further incentivize, because there's a higher grant amount given for water protection districts. So this is something that's really crucial. But back on affordable housing, we've been busy. We have now 50 units that have come online and are occupied now between Gansett Meadows, 37 rental apartments, and there's a dozen condominiums in the Manor House project off Occoponack. Those are all inhabited now. We also purchased property in Wainscott. One of those properties in that conglomeration had a house on it, which we are renting to as an affordable house while we plan for a much bigger project there. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions in town about affordable housing. This isn't subsidized housing necessarily. And in many cases, these are working professionals. They can be teachers, business owners. I mean, the wealth disparity is such now that, white collar workers even have a difficult time, doctors, nurses, it's very difficult and challenging. And there are many, many attributes to being able to have these folks living in our town. Obviously, if you have doctors that live in town, nurses, especially in a time like the pandemic, that's resiliency built into the community. We have volunteer fire departments and ambulance services here. Those are working people who volunteer their spare time, as in many cases, and have for generations within families. They're a core part of our local community, and we need to be able to find ways that they stay here to provide invaluable services to our community. And
are those people first in line, so to speak, or are they part of, so like teachers, if you're a teacher or
the first responders do get in a rating system, depending on the particular project, they get preference points, certainly, and that's something we'd like to further encourage. We did work with Habitat for Humanity, recently built a house on Harrison Avenue on town-owned property for a firefighting family, young family just starting out, and so it's a very rewarding effort. But there's a lot more that needs to be done, and we're losing more affordable neighborhoods all the time. People are demolishing homes and building much more extravagant homes, making the available affordable housing even harder to come by.
Well, that's happening in my neighborhood. That a lot of those my neighborhood was a working class neighborhood, and a lot of the smaller houses are being sold, and then big houses are being put up, which is why I was thinking it would be great if the town had a subsidy for buying the smaller houses to keep them. But, maybe I'll just have to put up a proposal and send it to you or something.
That's actually something we have considered. And but even that, I mean, think about it, if the average home's $1 million now.
I know. But with all your riches from the CPF, I mean, but that's enormous. It's enormous amount of money. But environmentally, though, would it be better or worse? It seems like it would be better to save the older houses than to rip down and put in all new stuff and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it just seems like, I don't know.
Yeah. And those are the challenges that we face as a community, trying to figure out a path forward so that we can maintain, our working neighborhoods. We see the negative impacts both by the erosion of community as well as the increased traffic on the highway. The commute times, on our single highway entering South Fork are such now that it becomes more and more difficult for businesses and government to, attract, hire and retain staff. So, one of the ways we've worked to combat that is by the South Fork Commuter Connection train service, which increased the commuter trains to our area, to and from the area. And that was in place, before the pandemic. We've had over 40,000 riders. That all got sidelined when the pandemic came.
Right.
And, I'm now getting word that hopefully, by the end of summer, that service will be reinstated by the LIRR.
I think that would be fantastic.
It'd be great to have it back before then, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. It is a single track system, which has limited the number of trains that can come, and the scheduling's problematic.
Right.
We've pushed for better infrastructure and sidings so that trains could pass each other on single track at stations and whatnot. And I would hope and envision that, light train running from Montauk to Southampton Village on a very regular basis would alleviate a lot of the highway traffic. People who want to go between hamlets could do so. And, if there are options like, Uber last mile transportation, shuttle buses,
right.
We could eliminate a number of vehicle trips. And,
wasn't somebody at some point going to do a bike path along the railroad tracks?
So that's long been talked about, and the town has acquired easements over decades in order to make that happen.
I would personally love that. My house is literally along the railroad tracks. I could take my bike right here, and it would be good for me, good for the environment, good for you.
Absolutely. So, reducing vehicle trips. We live in such a beautiful area, and it's not that far flung. I mean, there were safer pathways for bicycles and pedestrians, I think, are part of the answer as well for reducing vehicle traffic. And, I might be approaching that issue of traffic myself with going back to bicycle now that the summer season's come on, because when I leave here at 6 o'clock in the evening, the traffic's backed up from the light. And if I had a bicycle, I'd probably get home quicker, honestly.
Right.
Riding through the village during rush hour. So
I know that's crazy. All right, I wrote down balloons. So we just Avenue School that you mentioned before did a video that they played at the town board meeting, and we put it on LTV. What do you think is going to happen with that? Any thoughts about? I mean, I know it goes through a whole process, but it's interesting that this is something that people have really latched onto.
So we already had passed legislation prohibiting the intentional release of balloons, because essentially that's littering. And we know as a coastal community, we see balloons washing up on the beach all the time. The ribbons entangle wildlife. The balloons themselves, in many cases, the mylar balloons tend to lose their coating, and then it's just clear plastic floating on the surface of the water. Sea turtles eat jellyfish. That's what they live on. And they often confuse balloons for jellyfish and will ingest them, and it can be fatal to them. So, there's so many reasons why we shouldn't have these single-use items, in our environment. And, I think this is one step towards envisioning another way to celebrate somebody's birthday or graduation. There are other ways of doing that without, using potentially harmful balloons. Also, helium is a finite.
I know, isn't that funny?
Finite gas. Whoever thought? And I think it should be reserved for inhalation, so you can talk fun.
I know.
But
when
seriously,
I found that out, I was so surprised, and I thought about all of the helium I'd wasted.
But seriously, think of what maybe some future solution to a problem we have that helium solves, and we'll be like, wow, we squandered all that on people's birthday balloons years ago. If only we had used that resource more judiciously. So, that's the pro side, the positive side. The other side of the argument is, some of our local, store owners who sell these balloons. That's part of their income. In some cases, they already have stockpiles of materials that they're planning on selling. They have investments. And so, perhaps a phase-in time is appropriate. We've done that with the ban of styrofoam. We did that with the ban of single-use plastic bags. We gave people an opportunity to dispose of their inventory before the ruling, the law took effect. Something we should consider, I think. And I think we do need to have better understanding of, how many businesses that this would affect. But all in all, I think it's a good move, and it's definitely a goal that I think we should move forward on. Exactly when that happens, not sure yet. I think we need a little bit more work on it, but I am supportive overall of that. I mean, it won't completely alleviate the problem. If you think about it, somebody could release a balloon in Kansas. The balloons that we're seeing, could remain in the atmosphere for several days, travel across country, and end up on our beaches. And I'm sure they do. Be interesting if manufacturers tagged the location of where that balloon was sold, so we can just get an idea of how far flung this problem is. I think that'd be a really interesting study to see. I know when I'm out on the water in the summertime, when I do get out on my boat, which so far hasn't happened yet this year, that I see, Sunday afternoon out in the bay, Gardner's Bay or Block Island Sound, I'll see these Mylar balloons floating in the water. And I pick them up when they're, within, I don't know, 300-400 yards.
Impossible, right?
I mean, I'm not going to drive half a mile, to go pick up the balloon, but, because I'm usually up for other reasons, but I do pick them up. And I had a garbage bag filled with just balloons from last season that when I was cleaning up the boat this year, I found, in the cabin. And it was remarkable how many balloons I had deflated in that large contractor bag. And that's just from the few times I'd been out. So sadly, it's ubiquitous. I think we saw at the board meeting, there was a picture of the new swale planting of aquatic vegetation, whatnot, over off Methodist Lane. The park there, the village has done a sort of like a rain garden there. Mm-hmm. And already the ducks were using it, and already there was a balloon floating in that water body. It's just,
well, that brings up, I mean, we're almost at the end, but what that brings up is the fact that now you said there are 3 times as many people, and we have also 3 times the amount of litter and the amount of birthdays and the amount of graduations, and the amount of people remembering stuff. So I think that is going to be part of what you guys have to figure out.
Well, and I think that's a really important point, that with a new population, I think there's a responsibility for us to inform that new population about what our values are here. Right. We should try to retain those values of protecting our local environment and helping us keep this place beautiful and clean. And so we'll have our work cut out for us on that front as well.
A lot more people. Okay, Peter, any last words before we say goodbye and see you next week?
Well, I'm hoping that the weather will continue to warm. And that
we did have that one day that was like 85 degrees. Remember
I know,
that?
right? It went to 48. So
So hopefully we'll have nicer weather. Anything else? And graduations are coming up. So
Yeah, graduations, we are continuing to, I think, see the infection numbers decline, which is really encouraging. And, outdoors, people really don't have to be wearing masks unless they're really packed in close together, and then it's not advisable. I would continue to encourage people to get vaccinated. At this point, we don't have a town vaccination clinic scheduled other than a second dose clinic mid-month, but there is a 27-day-a-week vaccination center at former Southampton College. It's run by the state. It's walk-ins or appointments from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 7 days a week. So if you're not already vaccinated, please go get vaccinated, and we'll be back to normal in no time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. And we'll see you next week with Michael, I'm sure.
Thank you, Morgan. It's great to see you today.
Great to see you too. Have a wonderful week. Bye, everybody.
You too. Take care, everyone. Bye.